I'm Martijn van Dijk, and I'm working at Xamarin, where I am developing mostly apps and libraries. I'll talk about that a little bit later. So today we're going to talk about MvvmCross, and specifically about MvvmCross 5. And we'll do a deep dive into lots of things around there, give a bit of a background on it, introduce what's new in MvvmCross 5, and explain how you can get started. So with that said, I work for Xamarin, and we are a Visual Studio partner, Xamarin Premier Consulting partner, and a Microsoft partner. We work on making apps for companies, and we do a lot of consultancy. So if you ever need anyone, call us. So let's take a look at what we're going to learn today. And I think that a lot of people that are here are wondering, they saw MvvmCross, they saw MvvM as an architecture, and when they're starting on their next app, they're wondering, is this something that I need to use? Do I need to look into this? And I think that's very important to learn today. So the goals are to learn the basics of MvvM, what it actually is, discover MvvmCross as a framework, learn how you can get started with MvvmCross, create your first project, and then get up to speed with the last updates with MvvmCross 5, and you find out how to get involved with MvvmCross as a contributor, or with reporting bugs and everything that helps in the open source community. So what is MvvM actually? And this is maybe a bit of a basic question, but I think that it's very important to understand what MvvM means. And a while ago, I was in a university class with Rob, and he gave an introduction to MvvM. And I think if you want to know what MvvM as architecture is in detail, you should probably attend one of those. So Rob, what would you say that MvvM is in like one sentence?
Well, I would say probably it is a pattern that separates the concerns of your architecture. How's that for one sentence?
That's perfect for one sentence. So MvvM means model, view model. And it's exactly like you said, it's mostly about separation of concerns. And if we're going to look a little bit into that, we can sort of abstract away in 3 silos that are, coupled together with a binder. And as you can see here, we've got a view with a button and a text on it. And this is a very abstract form of an app and of a view with a view model and a model to it. So you see a button here. The button is connected to the view model through the binder, and the model is probably some data that you want to get from the internet. So what happens here is you see the button binds to the view model. It will fire off a command with an action behind it as soon as you press the button. In your view model, you can get some data from the internet, or you can do some processing. You can manipulate the data you have on your view model, and you can send back a change of data to a property in your view model, which will notify a property changed, and then the text on the actual view will be updated. So what's so special about this is that the view and the view model have no real connection. The view doesn't know what the view model is, and the view model doesn't know the view. But the binder here connects the 2 of them together. And if you really think of this abstraction, you see the silos, it's really a separation of the concerns. The view is responsible for showing your view, your button, your text, every UI element, while the view model is responsible for containing the actual data, for containing all the logic. So I would call it the shared layer. This is what I just said, a very brief introduction, and I would really recommend to listening to the Xamarin University Introduction to MVVM. So since we're talking about MvvmCross in this university guest lecture, let's go deep dive into that. Let's start with the history of MvvmCross. And so MvvmCross started quite a while ago. It started, I think, at the top of my head, around 2011, 2012, which is quite a long time already, given that Xamarin is not even that old yet. By that time, it was started by Stuart Lotz, which is one of the maintainers of MvvmCross, and he thought, well, we need something better than just MVC or MVP, which was very common in that time. So when you looked at things like WPF and Windows Phone apps, the MVVM architecture became quite popular. And while taking that in incorporation, he thought of a concept for MVVM in Xamarin. And MvvmCross came out of that. So in the beginning, it first started off really small and like a personal project, and then it evolved into something much bigger, and the community picked it up, and a lot more people started working on MvvmCross and make apps with it. And I think that it's really great to see that Xamarin really grown as an amazing company, as an amazing product with all their different products like Xamarin.Forms, and MvvmCross sort of grows with that. So why would you use MvvmCross? And this is a question that both me and I think Rob and all other trainers get a lot. Like, why do you need actually MvvmCross when you have Xamarin.Forms, which provides you by default with MVVM architecture? Why would you use it? And I think that I've got some really clear answers on this that we will discuss on later. Another thing is, of course, Xamarin Native. Xamarin Native and Xamarin.Forms are two things that coexist. And MvvmCross works for both of them. And that's what I'm going to make clear. Cross is really cross-platform. It works on every different platform. So if you say, well, does it work on Windows? What is supported there? Well, all the different Windows platforms within Windows are supported. So you can think of even a console application. You can think of WPF, UWP, all that sort of thing. Also, of course, all the Xamarin components. So Xamarin.Android, iOS, tvOS, everything here. It is also the most mature and advanced MVVM framework. Personally, what I really like about MvvmCross is the community. And this is something that I think is also amazing in the Xamarin landscape. There's a big community out there, a lot of people contributing to open source. So even Xamarin, like last year, open source their framework. They open sourced Xamarin.Forms, the Xamarin main libraries. And with that, you can actually contribute yourself now and make those even better. With that, and with that many people contributing, we are actually already to 200 people contributing to MvvmCross, which is really big for a GitHub open source project. So with that, we got a lot of pull requests coming in, a lot of issues, and we also got a fast release cycle to make sure everyone gets the newest, get the greatest and the best. And to make sure that it's still easy to use, that it's still really clean, really lightweight. We as maintainers focus on to make it clean and easy in regards to conventions, to the code base, to how everything is packaged. And all summed up, I think this makes it really great. So here we see two quite familiar faces, I guess. So Miguel de Casa, he is the, well, I don't know if he's Xamarin CTO anymore. He is at Microsoft now since they were acquired by them. And Scott Hanselman, they both love MvvmCross. And for example, Scott Hanselman, used it in quite a bit of their demos live on stage, for example, on builds last year. So I think that shows something about the maturity of the framework. So before I start explaining all the different components of MvvmCross, like IOC, dependency injection, presenters, and all that sort of stuff, I just want to go and deep dive in setting up a basic project, because I think it's important to understand and look at what it means and how it is used, how you set up a project. And by seeing it, you probably get a basic understanding, and I'll explain it. And then you get the feeling for it and you see how it works. So let's open up Visual Studio here. I've got Visual Studio for Mac installed. And I'm just going to start a new project here. And as I told before, MvvmCross is really about abstracting separation of concerns, and that's why it's very important to start off with a portable library or .NET Standard library if you feel for it, if you want to make that work yet. So we start off with that, and let's create a new project here. So I'm gonna call this University, and since this is the shared project, I'm gonna call it Core. And in Core, everything that is shared with all the different Vue platforms like iOS and Android is held there. And the solution name is just University in this case. I want to use Git maybe, so I could put this online later, use a Git ignore. I'm going to check if everything is right. Seems so. Let's create this thing.
And Martijn, so you're using Visual Studio for Mac, but just to be clear, all this is going to work with Visual Studio for Windows, and it's going to work with UWP applications in Xamarin.Forms also, correct?
That is correct, yes. So I'm just using a Mac right now. I don't want to switch back and forth to a Windows machine the whole time. But to make clear, this is all going to work in Windows and Visual Studio 2017 as well. So we've added our core library now, and I'm going to right mouse click on the solution file. I'm going to press add, and I'm going to add a new project here. And let's take Android first. So I want to go ahead and add an Android app. And I'm going to give this sort of the same name. So it's going to start with University. And now I'm going to add Droid for Android. And let's change the identifier as well. And this here, the target platform, is a bit tricky. So this says maximum compatibility, but it actually means that, you've got to support a great deal of things. It says minimum 2 to 3. Which is not even supported by Google anymore in the newest support packages. So I would advise to start off from at least bottom 4.0. I'm just going to change that later and pick latest and greatest now. This all looks great, and let's create this project. So just to be sure what version is, I'm going to double click the Android project. I see that the minimum is 5, but I'm just going to pick here level 15 and going to use API level 25. Great. And just going to check the same for core as well. So this created a portable .NET PCL library with profile 111. I want this to be profile 7 to be the best compatible with MvvmCross. So, and we still need an iOS project, so let's add that as well. And I'm just going to add here the single view app. And I'm going to name it university.ios. All right, so we've got all our projects in place now. And the next step is going to be to add some NuGet packages. And those NuGet packages are going to add some files and going to add references to MvvmCross, which gets you ready to go. So I'm just going to right click on packages. And I'll search here for MvvmCross. And as you can see here, there are a lot of packages. There are like literally thousands of packages. So I'm not going to find this yet. So what I'm going to add is MvvmCross starter pack. Here we go. When I install the starter pack, it will add some files to my project, like the setup, a file to connect to your core library, and all that sort of stuff, which is really great. The only thing you need to take care of after you install the starter pack, you don't want to keep it installed in your solution, because after you do an update, it will overwrite your files. And this is just default behavior of NuGet. So as you can see, I've got core now. It added the packages for MvvmCross, bindings, core, and platform. And I still got the starter pack. I'm just going to open up the packages.config. I'm going to remove the starter pack from here to prevent getting my files overwritten later.
And Martijn, so just to be clear, you're not creating a Xamarin.Forms application right now. You're creating a native iOS and native Android application, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. So first of all, I'm now creating a native Xamarin application. I'm going to show you the Xamarin.Forms side of this as well later on. So I'll do the same for Android and do the same for iOS as well. It's just going to take a bit of time to download the packages. You can see some files coming in here on the left side. That's all okay. So Android is done now. I'm going to do the same for iOS. All right, it's downloading, setting, and successfully added. Perfect. So now I've got this in place, but I'm not ready to run yet. So I've got a to-do file here on Android and on iOS saying what I have to do to get finished. So there are two steps. I've got to add a reference to the core project. I've got it here. I've got to modify the app elegant. So let's do that. I'm going to edit the references. I'm going to click on projects here, university.core, and okay, here we go. So the next step is modify the app delegate to call the app start, which is in the CS file here. So this is already set up for you. I'm just going to copy this, going to paste it in the app delegate, and it gives me a red line here. So let's say quick fix using MvvmCross. So it's still missing something here. I'm going to add that as well. I'm going to add this here. So save. This looks ready right now. And let's do the same thing with Android.
Yeah, I think one of the great things ever since Stuart started MvvmCross years and years ago is including these text files really helps you get started from scratch. I always really appreciated having those text files that will help you along. So MvvmCross does a great job about that. And also I know you've spent a lot of time on the documentation lately. So lots of ways to get started. Really great.
Yeah, lots of ways. And so this is just one way. The documentation has really great guidelines for that as well. But what is also great is that our plugins for Visual Studio and for Visual Studio for Mac to get you started. So these extensions and these add-ins, you can download them from the Visual Studio Marketplace, install them into your environment, and they will create the whole initial setup for you. I can show you that later. For now, I'm just going to go ahead and fix Android here. So in the preferences, I'm going to add a reference to the core project, and it says remove any old main launcher. All right, so I've got a main activity here. I'm gonna remove that, delete. So there's a new view here. This looks all great. All right, let's just see how it goes. Maybe there's still some problems. We'll figure that out pretty soon. I'm gonna fire up iOS now to see how that looks. All right, so apparently there's a problem here. I think this is fixed in the next update. It's just an extra constructor added here. I'm gonna remove that. So here we go. We've got an iPhone simulator, and it's got a text box and a button to reset the text. And here it says hello MvvmCross. And I'm just going to change this into hello university. So this text box here is bound to the view model. And let's just take a look at that. We go to the view model here. And it said hello MvvmCross to start off with. And it has got a set property. When the value changes, it will raise a property change and will update the values. If I place a breakpoint here and go again to hello university, if I just add the exclamation mark now, oops, there's the breakpoint. And as we can see, the value, let's see, it's got an update. It's now hello university with the exclamation mark in the end. So let's continue, and it's updated here, both here in the view and in the view model. The weird thing is, as I told before and showed you in the abstraction of MvvM, the button here is also bound to the view model. And if I click this, it will reset the text. So as you can see, I click the button, the breakpoint is hit again. Let's continue. And the text is back as it originally was. So the bindings here are working and all. And I think this is just really great. We've been working on this for less than 5 minutes, and you've got your app running on iOS with a binding, with a button and a text box. So let's just have a look at the same in Android. And if any of this is going too fast, feel free to ask questions, how to set it up, and I will talk later about the details about these bindings and the details about MvvmCross. But I just want to make sure everyone can get started. So here we go. We've got the same on Android. Can add some text here. When I press reset, it's resetting to the original value. So we've got Android and iOS running with bindings, with MvvmCross, and everything under 5 minutes.
Right, so
this was setting up a basic project.
Hey, Martijn, before you continue, we got a couple questions about that. So if you go back to the code, you have the set property change method. And we question, is that new with MvvmCross 5 or 4, or has that been, or set property method? Is that new, or has that been around before?
It's been around for a while. So this has been introduced in MvvmCross 4.0. And I think that came around for about 2 years ago.
Okay. And another question, when you're adding these NuGets to your portable class library, your PCL, which profile should they use? So should it be profile 7, profile 111, 256? Does it matter? What would be your recommendation for profiles?
Yeah, so the profile needs to be compatible with the MvvmCross packages. And we, as a project, we use profile 256 right now. So if you use that, it will be 100% compatible. but there's still a lot of profiles that would work with this. So at least profile 7 is one that's often used, and I think profile 111 is also often used, but I'm not sure if that's 100% compatible. So I would recommend using either 2, 5, 6, or 7.
Okay, and one more question while we're on this screen here. So the MVX view model, the base view model, has this set property method, and you can do your property notifications that way. Are there any issues by using Fodi's property changed? For those who don't know, Fodi is a Weaver. It's a aspect-oriented programming where we can have it automatically implement the iNotify property change during compile time. So are there any issues using that, or do we have to use the set property method?
No, there are no issues using that, so you can just use that, that's fine. The set property method is just for your convenience. So what it does behind that, it will check if the property is already the same value, so equality check. And if that's not the case, it will raise a property changed and fire off the event to raise the property in the view. So it's just for convenience.
Great, thanks.
All right. So any questions that you have, you can ask them later after you've seen the explanation about all of this. So we just saw a view model, and view models are the heart of MvvmCross. It is where most of the work happens, where you do all the shared code, where you do your logic, your business rules, everything that you want to configure from a shared code base, you do in view models to connect them to the views. And I'm going to talk about some other stuff that you can use as well, because sometimes you might want to use a service with interfaces to actually access platform-specific code. So view models are notify property changed aware, which means that if you change a property and you raise a property change for that, it will update the value, it will trigger a change, and you will see this happening on your view. I would also, again, advise to listen to the Xamarin University classes around these topics. It's really fantastic to get a lot of insight on these topics, because if you know what you're talking about here, you can also know how to better implement your application with MvvM. So what you see here is just a really small class called MyViewModel, and it extends an MVX view model. And MVX is sort of the standard naming convention in MvvmCross. All the classes that you have and that you can use are starting with MVX. And in this case, I've added a generic MyObject, and this means that the object will be sent to my view model when I navigate to it. So this is a way of navigating to a view model with parameters. View models also have lifecycle events which are connected to the view, so you get updates for when the view has been appeared, when it's disappearing, all that sort of stuff. And you can use that to implement specific stuff. So now we've got our view model. We want to bind this view model to the view, and we've seen the view before in the sample application. We've got like a title maybe, or a text box, or a button. What we see here, I've just added the samples for iOS and Android. We need to do two different things here if we're not using forms. So on iOS, you need to create a binding set between your view controller and your view model. And this is because the iOS designer doesn't allow you to sort of inject custom code, custom bindings directly. So we need to couple, in this case, we see, for example, a label coupled to a title. So here you see set.bind, it binds the label to my view model that has a property called title. And after I say set.apply, this will create a two-way binding between those. On Android, it's a little bit easier because you can do your bindings directly in XML files in your view files. So you just define local and you say local.mvxbind. You bind your text, in this case it's a label, you bind your text to the title property on the view model. You can still do, just like iOS, you can still do on Android manual bindings in code if you want to. So we've got the bindings in place now, we've got a view model, and we want to get some data in. We want to get some data from a backend. We have a backend, let's say we have a backend in Azure. We've got an API running there, which you know, has a push implementation, for example. You want to get that into your app. What's difficult about that, and what we talked about earlier, is that you need to separate concerns. So push is a very platform-specific thing. You need to implement it differently on Android and iOS, Windows, and all the other platforms. So to do this, we need to use an interface, and we implement that interface into the specific platform. So we can define an iPush interface on my core project, and that I can reference in my Android project. I make a class there and register it as a singleton in the MvvX singleton container. Using that, I can access this shared code in my view model and execute it. So I can register my push service inside a view model, inside my shared code, while it's still running on iOS, Android, and Windows. So I think this is really great to separate those concerns. Just make sure that you use interfaces for everything. And this will really help you to focus on where things are. There are a couple of other functions that you can use as well. You can also construct using inversion of control, or you can just register types. And if you want to use this, going to come to that now, you can use this also with dependency injection. So in this case, here in the sample, you see a JSON converter and a location watcher. And those I might have implemented, or I'm using an MvvmCross plugin to add those functionalities. And you want to inject them to your view model. And a lot of people asking me, like, why do I need to use dependency injection? Isn't this just, you know, extra work? You need to figure out how dependency injection works. Well, that's one big main advantage here. And that is that if you inject your services, inject your properties into your view model, you can actually test them. You can mock your services in your unit test project. And with MvvmCross, we've got a separate IOC supporting test package. I'm going to show you that later. And you can inject mock services. So this really helps you, again, to separate concerns, but also enables you to really focus on getting great tests in your app. MvvmCross uses by default convention over configuration. So what we saw before in the sample, and I'm just going to open the sample up again. So let's see here. We saw that we have a view model called main view model, and we also have a view called main view. And here on iOS, we've got the same. This is also called main view. And what this means is that the first part of the name is what the convention is here. The configuration. So the view part behind it is going to be looked up by MvvmCross and coupled to view model. And in this case, main is the same on everything. So as you can see here, there's no relation to the view model. And this will just be looked up by the name. So if we go back again to my presentation here, as we can see, this might not always be a good way. So maybe you have a different name for your view than your view model. And what I can advise is to use generics. And I would say generics are probably the best to use in any case. Why is that? That is because with generics, you get typed typed conventions, typed view models in your views. So let's just show that. I go back here. So if I go here and I type view model, I can see everything that's in the default interface, which is MvvX view model. There's a couple of methods, and that's it. But I'm connected to the main view model. And if I open that up here, I can see I've got a public property text, and I've got a public command reset. And I might want to access those from my view, but currently I can't. So what I could do is I could cast this view model to main view model, but what's much more convenient is to add a generic here. So I can say MvvX activity, and the view model for it is going to be main view model, which is in core view models. So when I now add the dot, I see that it extends from main view model, and Visual Studio picked up for me with IntelliSense that I'm now connected to my main view model. And I could actually access the text here and say, hey, this needs to be something else. This needs to be a university. And using this, I can access my view model properties in my view if I need that. So the same goes for any other sort of conventions in MvvmCross. For example, value converters or bindings, target bindings. Based on the name, MvvmCross will look up where it needs to search for your view model or value converter.
Hey, so Martijn, we got a quick question here. When we're talking about the IOC container, so MvvmCross has its own IOC container. Can you replace that with a different one, or is MvvmCross always going to use its built-in one?
That's a great question. So MvvmCross is, like I talked about in the IOC part, is very much based on interfaces. Almost everything has an interface, and that is also taking care of or making sure that you can replace those parts. So what's great is that, for example, IOC, there are a lot of different IOC packages out there. You can think of Tiny IOC or Artifact. So those kind of packages are really easy to drop in. You drop them in, you override or you implement the IOC container interface for MvvmCross, and MvvmCross will automatically use this IOC container for you. I think this is a really convenient way, and it's not only with IOC, but with any part of MvvmCross. It's really extensible and easy to replace parts.
All right, great, thanks.
So let's talk a bit about navigation. And navigation is something that there's two sorts of navigation. You've got navigation from a view to a view, but what you see with MvVM as architecture is that you want view model to view model navigation. So you don't want just to have a view, because the view doesn't exist in the core, the shared package, but the view model does. So what you want is to have a navigation from one view model and then to another one, which will actually open up a view on your device, on your platform. And how that works, that opening of the view, I will talk about a bit later when I talk about presenters in MvvmCross. So in this case, we see a sample of a view model. The view model is called my view model, just the name. And I'm injecting the MvvX navigation service here. So with doing that, I can access the navigation in my view model, but this is not the only thing. I'm also able to unit test my navigation from the shared code base with the navigation service. And I think this really makes it great. So the navigation service is also async await. And with that, you can look at the sample here. So this is some method. This method is just going to be called when you press the button maybe. And what I see here, I do a navigate to the next view model. I want to pass in an object with the type my object, but I also expect it to return my return object to this function here. So when I work on the next view model, I might have some, some text fields and some properties, and I'm going to fill in some forms, and that all needs to come back to this view model as soon as I close that view there. So with saying that, I can say I want to await that because this is async, and the result of this is going to come back in this property here in this view model, and you can do anything you want with that. So you can process it and you can do stuff. And this is really helpful, for example, if you think of say a dialogue or a pop-up situation. So you have, for example, a yes or no question. You put a bool here in the my return object instead of my return object. You put a boolean in, and this means that this result is either going to be true or false. And on this new view, we'll have the buttons yes or no. And when it's pressed, I just say navigation service.close, true or false. And that's going to be given back to this result here. So this is really great for navigation.
Yeah, this looks really good. So a good question is, the way MvvmCross used to do it is we used to have a method called showViewModel. Is that still supported just for backwards compatibility, or is that completely gone now?
Yeah, so the show view model was the previous way, and it had some limitations, so that's why we replaced it with MVX navigation service. But as you just asked, it's still available for backwards compatibility. So it won't break any existing apps. This is just what I would advise as the way to go for any new app. And if you're already working for an app, it would probably be good looking into replacing your show view model with the navigation service.navigate. It's really easy to do. It's just, copy paste action and replace all those calls.
All right, fantastic.
So now we know how to navigate. There's still a question of how MvvmCross knows which view model goes on what screen with what view. And this is through something we call presenters. And presenters is really unique in MVVM. It's a really unique pattern that only MvvmCross really uses to now. And what it does, it enables you to customize the view presentation on the platform itself. So if you're thinking about an architecture like MVP, which stands for Model View Presenter, that has one presenter per view, and that presenter figures out what that view will do. In this case, the presenter will be per platform. So you've got one presenter for Android and one for iOS, one for Windows. What it does is, as soon as you fire off a navigation service.navigate to a certain view model, it will go into the presenter, and the presenter will look up where this view exactly is going to be shown. And it uses some attributes to figure that out. It uses some names. It's all built in there. So if you want to customize this behavior on your platform, I would advise to either implement a custom presenter, or you can use a presentation hint. And a presentation hint comes from your core code base and will give a hint to the platform on what you need to do. So you can either give a hint to, for example, clear up the backstack of your views in your navigation controller, or you can, you can do everything that you want there. So let's look at a sample here. We've got an iPhone, it's got a hamburger menu, a tabber, segmented control, all sort of really default or regularly used patterns. Probably everyone has seen them. We see sort of the same on Android. But you cannot use the same code framework because it's different controls. We see still sort of a hamburger menu, but this time it's called a navigation drawer. And we've got tabs in the top part instead of in the bottom. So what you can do is you can use view attributes to indicate where your view needs to be shown. So on iOS, you can say, hey, I have a root presentation. So this is the start of a new presentation, a new navigation. And on that, I will build up my view stack. I will put layer on layer. And with that, you can also configure different hints. So in this case, we have the root presentation. But if you want to have tab bars, like in the picture before, you can just say the MvvmX tab presentation and fill in the properties you use there, and it will be shown up as a tab bar. So this is really convenient, and you can do the same on Android. You can use the properties that are there on native platforms to implement the sort of navigation that you want to have. And I think this is really a great way to make the best user experience, the best UI possible. The great thing is that all of what I've been talking about, this is both Xamarin Native and Xamarin.Forms. So with Xamarin.Forms, you just have the same as with Native. You've got a presenter. That presenter will take care of showing your Xamarin.Forms shared view on your native platform. And you can customize the behavior the same as I just showed you now. You just add an attribute or you override the presenter to customize your behavior. What's really great about this is that you can mix and match Xamarin.Forms and native apps. And I think that's a question that I often get. Like, I started with my app, I built a great UI, MvvmCross is great, Xamarin.Forms is the best, we're making great UI, but I need this native elements. I need this native UI on this screen, but the other screens can just be forms. And I think this is really convenient to use the MvvmCross presenters, because you can just use the Xamarin.Forms page on one screen, and on the next screen you can use Xamarin native view on just the iOS and Android platform and have that native thing. So you can even have a Forms page on iOS and an Android page, native Android page on Android. So it's all about what you want as a developer, how you can enable to your users to use your app the best way possible, to have a great UI. And it also gives you the most code reuse possible, because it's all focused in one presenter, but the rest of your code is cross-platform. So let's just take a look at that real quick. Any questions about this so far?
Yeah, quick question. Is there a sample that shows this blending of Xamarin.Forms and native in the same app? Is there a sample somewhere that shows that?
There are a couple of samples. So in the MvvmCross repo is a sample, and there are some open source samples about this. I think that one of the plans that we have for MvvmCross, and I'm going to show you the roadmap later on, is that we really make this official and that we package it into the core project so everyone can leverage that out of the box.
Great, thanks.
So MvvmCross is just loading up right now. It's loading the solution. So here we have the full MvvmCross solution. And let me just walk you through the folders here. So we've got Android support, which is for the Android support packages. We've got binding, we've got code analysis. This is based on Roslyn. console, Windows console that is. This is core where all the view models go in. Droid, a Forms part for Android, iOS, UWP, iOS, platform. We've got the plugins. So here are all the plugins that you can use out of the box. And we also got the test projects down here. And I think that this is really great to look at what's going on with the recent development of MvvmCross. We've got some samples here for navigation, for events, for custom bindings, all sort of stuff that we really want to test every release. So with this, and we've also got a big form section here, for example. With this, we can really easily test the changes we do on real samples. And I also would advise to look at those samples to figure out, and this is also in the documentation how this works, to see actually in code what you need to do to get certain things done. So I'm just going to set this as start up. I'm going to add a div routing sample. Actually, it's not the one. I want to open up the playground. And if I just go ahead first and look here at the views in the playground. So we've got a couple of samples here, a child view, nested models, we've got split view with master detail pages, we've got. So I think that if you want to implement either of those navigation patterns, it would be really great to look at the samples here. It sort of looks like Xamarin or Visual Studio is stuck here in a build loop. Maybe I'll just close this and try opening it again. One thing that is also good to keep in mind when looking at those samples is if you have a bug or you have an issue that you can find out yourself where it comes from, but what you can do is make a reproducible sample. And what we really like is if you have a bug, you add the replication, the use case to either of these samples here, and that makes us that enables us to look at the bug and to reproduce it. And it's really great if people do that, and we love that. So let's try and fire up the playground again. It's just compiling right now. So as you also can see in the playground, we've got a core project, just like in the sample that I demonstrated. We've got an iOS project. We've got different sorts of projects here, and we can just take a look at those here. It's got all sorts of samples implemented to, where you can look at and what you can see how we implemented a model view, how we implemented the tabs. This really makes it easy to figure that all out. It really seems that this doesn't like building right now. You've got any tips here, Rob?
Nope, not off the top of my head. Does it give any errors or anything? What's it doing?
It's just taking a long time. Oh, I think it starts to build now. It looked like the build process was just stuck, like normally you see the blue line here coming up and, having progress. It just took a lot of time to do that.
Yeah, I think I've seen before that go to training sometimes slows things down a bit too once you have that running.
Right, right. Well, here we go. So we've got the iOS app here, and in the first screen we can look at what's all here, and we can select one of the options. So I'm just going to select tabs. I'm going to see there's a tab bar appearing here on the bottom with some tabs. Bloop, bloop, bloop. And if we just look at what is necessary to get those tabs showing here, let's just go to the iOS project. Look at the views. We've got a tab view here. And as I talked about before, with the attribute, and this says we want to wrap it in a navigation controller. The icon is going to be home, and that tab name is going to be tab 1. As you can see, this is tab 1 with the icon of home, which is in my resources, tab 2 and third. And I can just go deeper into this. I'm going to show a child, which will initiate a new navigation with a back button, or show a model view, and close this. I can go here. I can go all the way and go to all the different navigation patterns. So what we've learned here is that using the attributes, you can customize your view behavior.
So, quick question: where can they get that demo that you just talked about? Is that available on GitHub?
Yeah, that's available on GitHub. So that's available on github.com/MvvmCross/MvvmCross. And then there's the test projects folder, and all the demos are in there.
Great.
So let's talk a bit about plugins. So if you start off your Xamarin app, there's a lot of default and a lot of functionality that's available in the platform. Forms offers a great deal of things, but you also need some plugins to get you really started with native platform functionality. So you can either have, say, a accelerometer or GPS or native functionality. And MvvmCross has a lot of plugins available, and they're all on NuGet. So if you just search for MvvmCross on NuGet, you'll find thousands.
So
one of them.
Hey, Martin, quick question about that. There's some that are targeting some plugins that are targeting MvvmCross 4. Do you know, are those still going to work with MvvmCross 5, or do those need to get updated?
That really depends on the plugin and what functionality they use. If they use just mostly native platform functionality, and we are just providing MvvmCross as the whole package around it, it will probably still work, but no guarantees there. What I can guarantee is that the MvvmCross plugins that are from MvvmCross as an organization itself, they will work. We always update them to the latest version.
Okay.
One of them is the messenger. And what you often see is that when you're using view models, you have direct connections between view models, so you can't access another view model that you're not navigating to. To sort of work around that or have it available, we have got the MVX messenger. And with that, you can send loosely coupled messages to another view model. And you can actually send it to multiple view models, to services, or anything else you use. When you've got all of this in place, you've got your view models, your views, you might want to have different sort of properties of views in a different format on your screen, on the platform. And for this, we use value converters. And value converters are a very well-known concept, even in Forms, in WPF, or Windows, or whatever. And you can really change the format of your property. And in this sample, we see, for example, we use a datetime in our view model, but the datetime is not understandable for our view. So we need to change it into a string so it will, show up as a string and as a label on my view. And with value converters, you can just do that. As I talked about before, in MvvmCross, you really want to focus on separation of concerns so you can unit test and UI test. And with the MVX IOC supporting test, you can use IOC injection, you can use dependency injection inside your test view models, inside your test code, all your unit tests. And I think this is really great to, develop enterprise apps which have this kind of enterprise functionality. So let's go a little bit deep into Xamarin.Forms. I said it before, but everything I just told you is available for both Xamarin Native and Xamarin.Forms. But we have some Xamarin.Forms available, some packages that are specific for forms to help you even better with that. And I think that Xamarin.Forms is such a great product, such a great framework that helps you get started really easily with Xamarin and gets you started with great apps. And with MvvmCross on top of that, you can make even better apps. What it does is MvvmCross has some functionality that's not available in Forms, because Forms is more of a UI framework with Mvvm implemented, but MvvmCross targets to make your life easier. And what you just saw with IOC, with dependency injection, with a lot of this stuff, you can make your Forms app even better. And if I'm just going back to the sample here, let's try and open it up. Yeah, here it is. So I've prepared this MvvmCross solution front. Actually, I've written a blog post about this. You can read it up on my blog about using MvvmCross with Forms. And what you see here is we've got some packages and we've got the MvvmCross.forms package installed. And if I just look at the setup, you see that it uses the Forms specific setup and the Forms specific pages here. So if I just go to core and I see here MvvmForms view model, but the page here that I'm going to run is still in the shared project. So this is all the same kind of structure you expect in any Forms application, but it just uses MvvmCross to enable even more functionality. I'm just going to run this to show you. So this is I'm going to open up the screen a bit bigger here. And as you can see, this is the MvvmCross website. Go to the front page. Information is available here. We've got a blog, which you can follow up on with all the latest changes. And we've got the documentation here. And the new documentation has a lot of updated text about all sorts of things. So we can look at the navigation. We see all the things that you can use. But if we look at the right top corner, we see a button here called Edit. And if I press that, I go directly to GitHub to the correct file, and I can press the Edit icon here. I can make changes to the documentation right here, and then I can say create a new branch and start a pull request. And using this, I can contribute directly to the documentation and to the website. And feel free to request any new documentation as well if you feel that something is missing. So what's next then for MvvmCross? So a couple of things are next. So we've got improvement on the documentation. This is just the ongoing process. We will work on cleaning up the code even more. We've got improved presenters for Android, tvOS, and new and upcoming platforms, like for example Tizen, that we really want to support soon. We're also working on .NET standard support, more async await, and C#7. And if you want to see anything else in the future, please fill in an issue on GitHub, and we'll be happy to help you. So just a quick recap, where can you find all of this? MvvmCross.com is the place to go. Everything is available there. GitHub is where the source code is. If you want any direct contact with me or any of the other contributors, go to Slack and join the MvvmCross channel, and we are there to help you. If you got any really extensive questions, you want to talk about a topic, please open up a Stack Overflow post or Xamarin.Forms. We regularly check them and answer those. That was my presentation on MvvmCross. I hope everyone learned a great deal, and I'm happy to answer some questions.
All right, well, thank you so much. So for about 4 or 5 minutes there, my internet went out, so I missed some of it. But I think I've got all the questions here, and we have a few of them. So one of the questions is, how do you think we should do our UIs for iOS? Should we create them in code? Should we use Zibs? Should we use storyboards? Are there pros and cons to any of that? What would you recommend?
Yeah, that's a really opinionated question, or answer if I would give it there. I think that there's no, there's no way that is the best. They're all quite, good, and just depends on what you're used to. What I personally do is I use stick zips. I make my layouts in there. I use constraints to configure them, and I hook them up with code. There's just the advantage there that you can use the Xamarin Designer, you can use the Xcode Designer if you want, which is really quick to make your layouts. If you're doing it in code, it might be a little bit difficult to figure out how your layout is actually going to look like on the view on the screen on your iOS iPhone device. In regards to that, if you're working on Android, I would really recommend making your layouts in XML or XML because it is faster to make them. The layout inflation, your performance will be better when using that, and in opposite to using coded UI. And when you're using Xamarin.Forms, it would probably be the best to, for example, look into compiled XML to really speed up your layouts.
All right. Another question is in reference to converters. So would you think it's going to be better to use a converter if you wanted to convert, from A to B in a view, or would you add another property into your view model and have that conversion logic in the property and then just bind to that property?
I think it would be good to make a value converter for that. So you probably want to keep your view model as clean as possible. You want to process your data there, and you want to have the outcome from that. But yeah, your view model is something different than the presentation of your view and the presentation and the format of your data. So I would put the value converter in between to do that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things, it definitely depends. So if you're doing, converting currency or a date, then value converter totally makes sense to do that instead of having another string value for that date, for example. If you're doing more complex logic, totally changing something, maybe, or let's say you had a first name and a last name in your view model and you wanted a full name, that might make sense in your view model as opposed to a value converter. So it kind of depends on what you're trying to do. But yeah, like you said, I think converter is going to make sense most of the time.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the templates and the extensions for Visual Studio. There's a bunch of different templates, and actually, if you go to the MvvmCross website in the Getting Started section, there's links to a lot of different extensions. If you want to bring that up real quick, including things like the official MvvmCross ones, Jim Bennett's extensions or templates, NinjaCross. So which ones would you recommend, or what's the difference between those? So it's up there at the top.
Let me just, where it is?
Yes, in the Getting Started, right at the very top of the menu.
Right. Yeah, so there are a couple here. So the one that I personally made is the Xamarin course for MvvmCross. You can install this currently just in Visual Studio, but we're working on Xamarin Studio or Visual Studio for Mac plugin as well. I use this normally.
Okay, and you could check all the different ones if you're interested in them and see which one works best for you, I guess. Whichever one. Okay.
Well, so just one other thing that I want to mention here before all other things is that if you want to learn more, you can get involved. And one great thing that I can announce right now is that you can go to mvvmcross.com/hackfest, which is right here. And we're actually joining the .NET Summer Hackfest with MvvmCross. So this also means that you get a chance to talk to all of the contributors, to join in, to work on your project using MvvmCross. And we have some great events planned. We've got a live stream, we've virtual events, we've got an actual event in Amsterdam. And if you sign up, we will be more than happy to guide you through learning MvvmCross during those time periods.
Okay, well, let's see. We have some more. One of your demos actually was not using the new initialize, but the older init methods. Was there any reason for that?
Yeah. So I can probably just go to that here. So the init methods are still there for backwards compatibility. But as you can see, the init method is not async. So if you want to use async code, you need to do it in a new initialize. And let me just see if I've got a sample of that right here. Doesn't really look like it. Well, anyways, so if we go back to the sample here, if I just do override initialize, you can see that this is a task. And if you need to do any long running calls, for example, get data from a backend, you need to do it in the initialize. The init here is going to be fire and forget. It will not be correct in most use cases.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Let's see. Do you know when the next major release of MvvmCross might be released? Any plans on that? Roadmap?
Yeah, sure. So we talked a bit about plans, but what I think, if we just go back to the .NET Summer Hackfest, which we will be working on, which is starting right now, the announcements are going to be out tonight. And this is really a period where we're going to be focused with the whole .NET community on making MvvmCross even better. So as you can see here, the main goals are, for example, converting MvvmCross to .NET Standard. And this is something that also would mean that it's a breaking, maybe not really breaking, but it's a really a huge change. We will provide backwards compatibility support, of course, but will be a big change. And this will also be a major release. So I think in terms of roadmap, next major release will probably be, as you can see, August 21st to September 2nd, will be in September. So say somewhere in September.
Okay, yeah, best we can hope for planning purposes. Are there any known iOS 11 issues? So iOS 11 still in beta. Have you tried it? Is there anything people should be wary of at that time?
I've tried it, yeah, but there's no problems I found so far. I can say that I did a lot of testing, but just the first couple of runs seems all to work.
All right. So here's a good one. When Stuart first created the project a long time ago, he created these N+1 days YouTube videos, which were fantastic. They're a great learning exercise. Are those even relevant anymore, or should people avoid those? How much, they're 4 or 5 years old at this point.
Yeah, those are still fantastic to watch. All the basic concepts are explained in those. So I would definitely recommend watching those. But keep in mind that if you read the up-to-date documentation, some parts might have been replaced or deprecated right now. So for example, with the navigation, usually you use show view model to show a new view model. That's replaced by the navigation service now. The show view model still exists for compatibility reasons.
Okay, so just you can watch them, but just understand that they're rather old.
Yes.
But I love that he did those. Those are a great learning exercise. Any plans for new videos? Any plans for making new videos, N+1 videos or anything like that for learning?
Not directly for N+1, but we are working on new content for the documentation, and we might do some videos for that as well. And on the side of that, for example, here on university, you can watch this recording back, I think.
Yes, you can.
Yeah, so you can always look back at this, and I'm also doing a couple of podcasts soon. I'm doing some blogs. You can watch all of that and read it, and you'll be up to date on all of it.
Good. And like you said, you can jump in the Slack room too and chat there with the actual maintainers.
Sure.
So a question here, which you might be a little biased on. What's the advantage of MvvmCross over like Prism and Unity? Unity being the IOC container, not the game engine, but Prism as an MVVM framework.
Yeah. That's a really good question, because there are a lot of opinions on this, and if I'm just trying to not be opinionated here, I would say look at what fits best for your project. If I'm not opinionated, if I'm just what I'm used to, I would say go for MvvmCross, because it's the biggest MvvmCross framework. Like, it has the most functionality. It doesn't mean that it's any heavier or slower than any of the others. It's just as fast, but it has the biggest community. It has the most contributors, and that's something to keep in mind. Like, if you want to continue with this, if you have an app that you want to build with Xamarin, you want to have there's like a lot of roadmap, a lot of features that you want to build. This is for the long run. You probably want to choose a mature framework, and that's why I would recommend MvvmCross.
All right, and I'd say the best way to answer that is in 3 weeks from now, we're going to have Brian Lagunas on with another guest lecture on Prism and Prism 5. So everybody should register for that, and then you can compare them yourselves, and you can decide which one works best for yourself.
Yeah, that's great.
So let's see. Do you know how much does your app binary size increase if we use MvvmCross?
Really difficult to answer. It of course increases a little bit, but Xamarin also uses linking to strip away all the files that you don't need. So if you're having some parts of MvvmCross that you're not using, the Xamarin linker will strip those away. So it'll probably just be a couple of hundred kilobytes to some megabytes, depending, of course, on how much functionality you use.
And MvvmCross has kind of architected itself to have multiple NuGet packages and plugins and things that you can opt into, right? Where if you don't need all those plugins, don't add them. It's not going to add any size also.
Yeah.
Okay, couple more questions. If I have a view controller with the attribute MVX tab presentation, it would appear as a tab button as expected. But what if elsewhere in the app I want it to later be presented as, say, a modal? Would it be easier to subclass it and change the presentation attribute, or is there a way to specify the presentation type in code?
That's a great question. So what you can do here, and I can open up the code here. Let's go to the playgrounds and to the views, and you can actually override this with the interface called IMVX override presentation attribute. And with this, you can actually return the attribute in runtime. So you can make an if statement here saying, hey, if this is the situation, I want to return a model presentation. If that is the situation, you want to return a type presentation.
All right, so that'll work. Back on the subject of plugins, do you know what are the most common plugins that are used alongside MvvmCross?
Yeah, so here's the solution again on the left side. And if I open up the plugins folder, we see quite a lot here. The JSON plugin is one that's used in most applications. The JSON plugin is based on JSON.NET. So it's just using a wrap around that to use it internally in MvvmCross. I would also say, for example, localization is something that's used in a lot of applications. And another one is the messenger that we talked about a bit earlier. And visibility is one. You can toggle visibility of your views from your view models with this.
All right, and I would say probably download cache is pretty popular too.
Yeah, download cache is popular too, yeah.
All right, so talking again about Zibs versus storyboards and things like that. So could we use a segue combined with the navigation service abstraction?
I'm not sure about that. I've never done that myself. What I know is that like MvvmCross is really extensible, so it's really easy to customize. So what I probably think is that if you want to do that, it's probably really easy to get it integrated together because it's so customizable.
Okay, and it looks like maybe the last question here. If you have one command that needs to change the set of the UI styles, like the button visibility, the background color, the border color, all at once, how would you handle that? Is there a way to do that with binding? So basically, the view model needs to update a few different UI properties on the view all at once when you're handling one command. So maybe you're enabling or disabling, right?
Yeah, so inside this command, you could raise a property change for all of those binded properties in your view. But if you know that it's going to be all of them or like a huge part of it, you could say raise all properties changed, and it will just go through all the properties and raise change on all of them.
Okay, and raise all of them in the whole view model and just let the view figure it out.
Yes.
Right. Okay. And unless anybody else has any other questions, that is all of our questions. So thank you so much for all of your time and the whole presentation. MvvmCross is a great framework. It's been around for a long time. Like you said, very mature. Lots of functionality in it. But as Martijn said, go sign up for the .NET Summer Hackfest. That's going to be a great way to contribute back and start using it. Yeah, so there's the link right there. Just MvvmCross/Hackfest. It's in our chat window. But thank you everyone else for all your questions and all your time. This video will be up in probably a day or two. And remember to go register for all the other great guest lectures we have coming up in the next month. There's lots of them, including, like I said, Prism. We have Unity game development, which is going to be a really cool one. And Roslyn, creating your own Roslyn add-ins for the Roslyn compiler. So go register for those. All right, well, thank you, everyone, for all your time. Martijn, thank you so much for the presentation. Really appreciate it. And I will talk to everyone later.